All right, so we are recording. So we are doing Module 10 waterproofing on the 16th of May. So what I'm just going to cover with you guys is a little bit of feedback I got from basically one of the guys that I trained face-to-face who actually went through his interview two weeks ago. And I know I say this every week, but I'm not just saying this to pump up your tyres, but since I've been training for builder registration now for about 12 months, I still personally haven't trained anybody who hasn't actually basically got through first time for their license. And that's not that I'm saying I'm the best trainer or anything, because a lot of you guys go through other trainers like Dan and Ange and I forget a couple of the other ones, and then you choose to come online after you've done it face-to-face. So obviously the content we're delivering is basically teaching you what you actually need to know to basically pass your license. So it gives you guys that bit of security, I suppose. Yep, that we're up to now probably, I'm guessing, probably 420 guys that are licensed, and at a success rate of around 92 or 93%. So yeah, you're going to be nervous when you go in. That's natural. But the thing that might help you sleep easier at night, going, okay, well, there's 400 other guys who have done this course before me, and 92% have actually got license first time. So this is a bit of feedback I got off one of the guys. Now, I haven't had enough time to actually decipher exactly what it was. He was a bit vague, because he sort of came out and he went, wow, that was 2.5 hours, and it felt like it went for 10 minutes. So because it was sort of pretty intense when he was in there. But what I want to just show you is, and some of you guys might have covered this in your face-to-face classes, maybe you've been given this feedback from your trainers, but I haven't received this until recently from one of my students. So what I want to cover, and it's on page 141 of our slabs and footings, and it's got to do with basically doing our raft slab. So I'm just going to put this in here and show you. And so I've got a couple more pages. Now, as I said, I actually haven't had enough time to actually basically go through this and say, this is exactly what's on the assessment, this is what you've got to do, but it'll give you a little bit of an understanding of them. I'm sure if you read through this tonight on your own, and if you're going through in the next week or so, if you read this and this comes up in your interview for a DBU, DBM, or maybe DBLC, then you'll be able to basically nut it out. So as you can see here, normally the plans we draw with a raft slab are pretty basic, and this one here has got a few indentations in it. So what this actually talks about, there's a few other things I want to cover. I just want to show you the picture there, and then basically I'll just roll back a page and we'll read through what it tells us here in our Australian standards. So if I scroll back a little bit up here, so it just says here beam continuity in rafts. So this is, we've got this highlighted basically in a different section of our Australian standard, but this is in Appendix C section, whereas the other part we're doing is just in the more general part. So some of this is going to be the same, but what I want to talk about here, it says, should beams be, I might even highlight this so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Oh, it's not going to highlight the whole thing for me, but it is. So should beams be continuous in a straight line from edge to edge of the slab? This is more important than putting beams under walls when beams cannot be placed in a, so it basically tells us we want to have them basically, what does it say there, in a straight line from edge to edge. And then it says it's more important, this is more important than putting beams under walls. So that's more important, obviously, get them going from edge to edge. But then this is the main part. Beams cannot be placed, when beams cannot be placed in a straight line, the maximum deviation of 1 in 3 is allowed. So that's what we're looking at here. You can see here these deviations, and from what some of the guys have told me with their drawings, now I know it's hard for me to actually show you here because I don't have a drawing tool, but they've got a few sort of re-entrant corners coming in, and they've tried to actually basically draw that beam all the way through, but it actually hasn't lined up with the re-entrant corner on the other side. So we did talk about this a little bit last week, and it doesn't say anywhere that beams actually have to be in a straight line, but we need to know from reading this part here that if they're not in a straight line, the maximum deviation is basically 1 in 3. So just like a slope you would do on a ramp or some rafters or something. So basically for every 1 meter basically in height needs to be 3 meters in length. So that's your 3 in 1. So just be aware of that. And then it talks about a few other little parts here where L-shaped and T-shaped buildings. So the beams shall be located to continue to the edge beams at the internal corners, and considerable flexibility is allowed and the spacing of the beams. So the standard specifies the maximum spacing of beams and allows an increased spacing where increased spacing where there are extra beams in the transverse section. And that's when it tells us to see figure 5C 5.4. Because I'm struggling tonight, we're only 10 minutes in, I'm talking like Kenny Calendar. So this is, I presume, our figure C.54. So if you were to basically, we're not going to do any activities on this tonight. I just want you guys to be aware of it, have a read over it, and I'm sure you will understand it. And then that way, if you get a little bit of a bit of your testing on it, you'll be able to reference this and do it. So read these parts down here, and it talks about reentrant corners on both sides greater than 1.5 meters long, and the internal beams are arranged to provide full continuity at the intersection. So that some of that is then going to refer back to, I'll just grab the page, which we would already have this marked in our Australian Standard. Just bear with me, I'm just flicking through my hard copy here to find the page. A part where it talks about continuity in beams. So just got to find the page that that's on. You can tell because I actually train all the time, my tabs are starting to, to fall off. So that's on page basically 152. So I did cover this a little bit last week as well. So not 152, on page 52. So we talk about this, gone the wrong way, a little bit last week. And so just read it in your own. This is talking about these step outs for reentrant corners, and some of that does refer back to here. So if you can be across basically this part here, beam continuity in rafts, and then that part there that I showed you on page 151, it is, I find, probably the most challenging part of the course. Just for me being a carpenter and doing like a lot of, I suppose, subfloor, a lot of form work, but not being an expert in basically our raft slabs, because not many of us are concreters. And so even I used to do a lot of my own waffle pods, where we do basically all the form work, put the pods in, put the steel in, and then basically just be on the vibrator or the shovel when the concreters came out to actually pour it. And I presume that's probably what most of us are here like, and probably wouldn't be that involved in setting out a raft slab, like a stiffened raft. So it's probably a bit beyond what our comfort level is with our knowledge. So if you read through that in that part I just showed you on that page 151, and I'm sure you'll be able to make enough sense of it so that if you are given basically some sort of testing to do with that, that you'll be able to actually sort of reference. I pulled it down the page wrong again. I thought it was 151, must be 157. Oh, whatever page that was, you guys saw it anyway. Whatever page I was on before, where it showed that step in basically that the 1 in 3 step. If you can be across that and those reentrant corners, then have a read of it. If you've got any questions, ask me next week. But you should be able to answer any questions that the VBA are going to ask you on that. So that was just a bit of an update from the guys who basically went through in the last week or so. All right, so what I'll do, I'll get on to tonight's session. So I do this a little bit differently to probably how you might have done it in class before, and probably because we've actually got the use of the computer as well. I can send you over some extra curriculum. So just bear with me a second and I will bring this up, and I just would have emailed this over to you guys. All right, bear with me a sec. This is great viewing on your end, no doubt. All right, so this here I just emailed over, and this isn't going to be a make or break part of your license, but obviously because we, this builder registration course is designed for pretty much any license class. So the guys who are normally doing, your DBU, your DBM, or your DBL in carpentry, pretty much are going to do this whole course. But if you've got guys who are doing like a class 10 license, then you're probably not going to be asked too much on waterproofing, I would presume. But then you're going to get guys who are doing a kitchen and bathroom license. Guaranteed this is something that's going to be quizzed a fair bit, about your waterproofing and your wet areas to make sure you know your products, know how they need to be waterproofed, and then also with your Australian standards. So how I try and put that into context for the guys who, when they go into their interview, is just think more out one basically after you get your license. So we're going to give you a little activity before, a little activity you might have done before. And if you haven't, we can do it. And then once you're done, we'll go through the answers. But this is just from Gyprock. And this is their installation guide, including wet area systems. So it's going to talk about, actually I'll bring up the page. So if we look at this, you'll make this a little bit bigger. It talks about their plasterboard range, how we should handle and store their materials, the different levels of finish. So if you're not sure about plaster, guys, actually different levels of finish. Going off the top of my head, I know you get different grades. I think level 5 might be pretty much where they've got to basically top coat the whole wall. And there's things like that. So this will talk about the levels of finish that you get. And then you as a chippy, if you know that you've got a level 5 finish, it would talk about I don't know if it'll be in this guide or in the Australian standards, but talks about the amount of deviation that you can have actually across your studs. And if there's a plaster there, you'll tell me the figures, but it's something like, if you're using an 1800 millimeter straight edge, then your studs can't deviate more than 2 millimeters over 1800. So there's things like that. So obviously if our studs have got too much of a bow in them, then we can't achieve this level 5 that's actually that has to be achieved through our specifications. So then it talks about the different framings that we use, how we've got to lay out our sheets, how we do basically masonry walls. Then we do our control joints around our door jambs, back blocking, and things like that. So cornice fixing. So what I want to try and make you guys a little bit aware of is that just remember when we actually basically when you guys become registered and you start doing work for clients, then we know we've got to guarantee that house. So it's hard to be there the whole time and basically see every little thing that every tradesperson does, but guaranteed. And I had this on my house that I recently built. I had to get a bit of maintenance done on it. Mine's only about 18 months old, and I had a little bit of a problem with one of my flashings, and there was a little bit of water where it had come through, and basically they had to reset one of my internal corners in the bedroom. And so also I noticed that a couple of my screws on my plasterboard had actually popped. So they hadn't popped as if they were all the way out, but you could see the actual head of the screw that they'd put in there. And so I just said to the builder who built it, look, this is also why you're here. You've got to fix this room. But you'll notice on this other side of the room that a couple of these basically screws have actually popped. So under his contract, he basically came back, fixed the waterproofing. And what it was, I didn't want to be, a pain in the bum to him. So I thought, well, if he's here, I'll get him to fix this one as well. It's part of, basically his guarantee on the house. And so he basically knocked them in and, or whatever he did, basically then put his plaster over and repainted the wall. So what I'm getting at is that you want to make sure that your plasterers are doing this, because depending on your relationship and who you use, if it's 18 months down the track and you start getting a few, whether it be in your basically in your ceiling plasterboard or wherever, and they start popping and you get told to come back, depending on your relationship with that plasterer who did it, it might be hard pressed getting them to come back, and therefore you've then got to basically foot the bill or do it yourself or pay someone else to come and actually fix it for you. Because as we know, it's up to us as the builder to actually guarantee that work. And so what I'm getting at, my first experience with this, and if you've heard this story, and I'm sure Branko has, because I train Branko in my face-to-face class, that my first experience with this was when I was in Queensland, and my first training job, we were doing some work with some pre-apprenticeship students. I used to do a little bit of carpentry training for apprentices, and when the floods came through Queensland, there was lots of people there where the insurance company actually didn't sort of cover the policy. And not that I'm some legal expert, but I just know there was lots of them who thought they had basically insurance against floods, and when they went to claim, the insurance company said, oh no, you're not insured against that type of flood, it was this type of flood. And I know we're all laughing going, geez, you've got to be joking, but no, the amount of people who actually thought they were covered and weren't was unbelievable. So what the government did, they had a lot of obviously kids wanting to get into apprenticeships, and basically they made like a pre-app, I suppose, a 3-month course where I actually went out and with a bunch of sort of 16-year-old kids, and what we actually did, because all these people didn't have any insurance and couldn't afford, because the flood levels went all the way to the ceiling. So some houses just had absolutely no plasterboard in them whatsoever. So they got the materials donated through different charities like the Lions Club and Rotary and things like that. And they basically donated the materials or gave the money to the hardware store. I would basically do the takeoff, work out how much plasterboard we needed. And then these kids pre-apprenticeship, we would go and basically fix all the sheets. So then, you know, like the free labour was myself. Well, I was obviously getting paid as the trainer through the TAFE, but these kids, as part of their TAFE course, were then actually fixing all this plasterboard. And so I would say to the clients, look, you know, these kids are only 16. They don't have the skill set yet to actually be setting the plasterboard. So I recommend that, you know, you engage a plasterer yourself, and normally basically like the charity would actually pay for that. And so what happened was, when I had these 16-year-old kids, let's just say it was, who's this? Let's say it was CSR. I actually went and downloaded the actual installation guide for their ceilings and for their walls. And basically ran the kids through it, print off a couple of copies, put them in the house and said, okay, this is how this has to be fixed. And we actually fixed this plasterboard to the specification. I'll see if I can show you. It would have been something very similar to this booklet I've got here. So let me see if I can scroll down and find what I'm after. Yeah, that was something like that. And it showed basically when we did sheets. Anyway, so while I'm looking, I'll keep telling you. So I've basically said to the kids, yeah, this is how it needs to be fixed. Here we go. So we've gone and basically fixed all these walls. See if I can make that a little bit better for you. As per this here. So it talks about, you know, when you put your dobs of glue in, that basically what the spacing between those needs to be. And when you put your screws in, you know, 300 millimeters centers on the butt joints. And then obviously you can't have a screw within a certain distance from where your glue is going to be. And then it talks about, you know, having a 6 or 10 millimeter gap underneath the board, which is pretty standard. I don't know anyone who doesn't do that anymore. But anyway, what I'm getting at, it was more to do with these screws and the fixings that we put in. And then these parts here. So as you can see, the sheets, the way that it was in our manual, was pretty much just to screw top and bottom of the sheet, put all these dobs of glue at 300 centers, and then we would put these temporary fasteners on there, where we would grab an off cut of plasterboard, you know, we were calling like a tile, putting it on, and that would basically screw through the tile into that stud, which then, as you would know, would hold it there until it sets. Then we'd actually pull those tiles off, and the plasterer would just have to come along and basically set over those holes that they put in. Anyway, so when it was story I'm getting at, I'm probably going long-winded here. Basically what happened was, once we'd done the house, because we did about 4 houses, I think, and basically the plasterer who'd been engaged by, and he was a qualified plasterer, been engaged by the owner, he'd got the money given to him from Rotary, came through and said, yeah, mate, you know, when are you going to be finished? I'll come and do the setting. He came through and had a bit of a look to see, you know, how much he had to do. And he said to me, he said, fuck, mate, what are you doing? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, mate, look at all those holes. Look at all those screws you got in it. And I said, yeah, mate, that's as per the CSR installation guide, and it meets the Australian standard. He goes, oh, fuck, mate, nobody does that. I've got to go and patch all those. And I said, well, look, mate, I'm sorry, but that's how it's got to be done. That's what the Australian standard says. This is how it's got to be to comply with how CSR says it's got to be fixed. I said, at the end of the day, mate, I'm the one who's, you know, doing these 4 or 5 houses, and I don't want them popping and then people coming to me and saying, hey, Adam, that plaster you did, you know, was crap, it's all poplar. I said, I'm affiliated to the TAFE, and we need to be doing stuff to Australian standards and teach these kids basically the proper way to do it. He's like, oh, fuck, mate, nobody does that anymore. Just put a bit of glue here, screw here, and screw, and sort of show me. He said, mate, it'll hold. And I just said, nah, look, sorry, mate, this is how it says it's got to be done, and that's how we're doing it. And he was a bit dirty with me that we did it exactly like that, because it obviously created more work for him. And another one too, when we did the ceiling, and when you talk about there, when you back block the ceiling, it's got to do with when your ceiling is obviously not joining over one of your battens. And it actually specifies the size of the offcut that you need to put in there as the back block. If you don't know what back blocking is, it'll be in here. I don't want to go on for too long about this, but basically there's something in here. So in our ceiling, a back block would be a bit of plaster we would put in between there, and basically so the joins on the sheets didn't actually flap. And so it actually specifies basically how big that needs to be, the back block in there, and it specified that we had to do it with I think it was a 6mm notching trowel with corner cement. And because these were pre-apprentice kids, we didn't have too many tools there, and I said to this plasterer when he was there, I said, look mate, would you happen to have a notching trowel? He said, mate, what do you want a notching trowel for? And I said, well, we need to back block the ceiling, and it says it needs to be done this as per this here. And he said, oh fuck mate, don't worry about that. He said, no, I just use a bit of stud adhesive and just a bit of offcut and chuck it up there. And I'm not saying that doesn't work, but what I'm trying to get at to show you guys is that you are the ones who have got to guarantee this. And, you know, these are habits that people pick up that, you know, that we're guaranteeing their work. And so the last thing you want to be doing is going back because your plasterer has only put half the amount of glue on that he thinks he needs to do, and probably he looks at it and goes, yeah mate, it's not going to move anywhere, but he's not the one who's going to guarantee it. And so he probably thinks, yeah, it hasn't moved in 3 months. By the time the defect period is, we're all good. But as we know, we've got to guarantee that building, you know, as for the 10 years of Building Act, or if you might have a contract for some reason, whether it be commercial or whatever, it might even be longer. So what I'm trying to show you in here is just be aware outside your trade what your other trades are doing, because you're guaranteeing their work and you don't want to be the one getting the calls back to actually fix it. So that's sort of how I introduced this unit. And I said, so don't think too much about, geez, will I be quizzed on that when I go in? If you're not doing kitchen and bathroom, probably not too much. But from here, and that's why we sort of introduce this exercise, so guys can actually, you know, find these answers. So this shouldn't take too long. I have emailed this over to everybody. And now, actually, I normally ask this at the beginning of the session as well. Has anyone not done this unit before? Like, I mean, like the whole module 10 on waterproofing. Is anyone actually doing this for the very first time? If you are, just type in the box a yes, and then that way, you know, I want to make sure that, yep, it is your first time. Excellent, Valavant. Cool. So what I've done, so what I'll do from there now, I've given that explanation basically about how that gyprock works. The exercise that you should have in your folder, and if you don't, I think I emailed it. If not, I can email it over again. Yeah, mate, I'll just unmute you for a second. So I think, can you actually mute yourself, Valavant, or you can't because you're on a phone?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, cool, mate. There you go. You had to send you the pin, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm just looking at the gyprock, the booklet that you showed me. If you go to the page 21 and where you were before.
Yep. Oh, you there? I think you dropped out.
No, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yep. No, I just made a beeping. There might have been someone else who maybe logged in. Yep. So sorry, it's on page 21. Yep.
So can you scroll up, please?
Yep.
Previous page.
Sorry, previous page of this one here. Yep.
Yep. No, the other one, the start board. Oh, yeah, that one.
This one here. Yep.
I'm not too sure whether. Yeah. In that diagram there, I'm not too sure whether I understood correctly. If you look at the joint in, no, sorry.
On the picture, the joint?
The previous. Yeah, yes.
Yep.
If you look at the joint where your hand is.
Yep.
Okay, and if you look at the one, there is no, you know, like a start wall at the back of the joint.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when it's just basically saying that if you don't join it over studs, then you need to back block between the studs. So as normally we just join it on a stud, but if for some reason you didn't, that's when they say back blocking. And if you read around there somewhere how to back block, it would basically tell you you've got to get an off cut of plaster and basically stick it in behind basically where those two sheets join. And that's what I was talking about before with the ceiling, where I know on the ceiling it said we had to actually use corner cement with a notching trowel and then basically push that back blocking onto that. So yeah, in reality, mate, I've never done it like this. I just always have joined it on a stud.
Yeah.
It's just showing you if you're going to join on a stud, that's how you need to do it.
Okay. So is there any minimum, I mean, you know, the size for the backlog? Or do we need to backlog it?
Yeah, it would be in here somewhere. What I'll do, here we go, where butt joints are formed between framing, prepare back blocking details as later in this publication. So when you guys are doing your exercise, I'll find that and bring it up. I dare say there must be a section in the booklet that talks about back blocking. So when you're doing these questions, I'll bring it up and we'll have a little bit of a chat about it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right, cool. No worries at all. So from there, guys, the exercise that we'll actually go on with, and you might have done this one before, and that's fine. So just chill out while the guys do it. Is basically this questionnaire here, and it talks about Aquacheck plasterboard installation. So this is just some questions to find out of that PDF. So if you come to this PDF that I emailed through, and if anyone hasn't got it, definitely let me know and I'll send it over. So if we come to this PDF, and you'll find in here when we scroll down, it'll give us our different types of materials, and there'll be one in there that'll say Aquacheck. I'm pretty sure so the Aquacheck installation. So if we go to page 44, then you should be able to actually answer those questions there. And it's not too hard, so do that, and then we'll go through them. As I said, that exercise is just purely about getting you to know your products. So do that. Once you're done, type in the box done. We'll go through the answers and then move on to the next little part. Yeah, maybe if you have done it and you're interested, maybe read through that document. We'll see if we can find that bit of back blocking that Valavan was talking about. Just remember to let me know when you finish too, Valavan. All right, cool. So we'll just go through those, and yeah, so what we've got here, and it's sort of funny, I taught this one in my face-to-face class about 2 weeks ago, and when we went through this, one of the guys, we'll talk about when the answer pops up, but it says, can you glue Aquacheck plasterboard in tiled areas? So the answer is no. Just obviously we can glue it if there's no tiles on it, but I'm presuming because it mustn't be strong enough to actually have the basically the glue and then the tiles. And one of the guys in the class said, geez, on the jobs I've seen heaps of plasterers actually glue the basically the Aquacheck. So there's one there. That answer should be no. What is the installation requirements at internal corner nail positions? So 150 millimeters. How many fasteners for 900 millimeter sheets? That was 5. How many fasteners for 1200 millimeter sheets? That's 6. The maximum center fixing of butt joints is 150. And the fasteners for 1350 millimeter sheets is 8. And then if you look at those pictures and we fill in the gaps, it's really just what we put up the top there. It's showing 200 for the internal screws, 150 for the corners, and basically, yeah, then those fasteners, basically, 1350 for with 8 fasteners, and then so on. So when you look at that wall there, that's pretty similar to how I was doing. It was something like that when I was doing those houses for the insurance work. You can see why the plasterer came along and basically was seeing all the screws. Obviously we didn't screw it all because it didn't have to be screwed. One of the bathrooms did, but the other ones, yeah, he wasn't real happy with all those screws down the corners. So with Valavan asking me before about the back blocking, so yeah, so that's pretty much, so I'm trying to get my mouse over, is it on here. So yeah, you can't go wrong when you read it, and I was surprised I remembered it because that was about 6 years ago, those floods. But yeah, so it talks about 200 millimeter wide and long enough to fit closely between the framing members, and 6 by 6 millimeter beads at approximately 20 millimeter centers at right angles to the joint, and then so on. So that shows him doing it here, and that's another thing too. You want to be aware, not just for waterproofing, but across the different basically systems you're using, whether it be different cladding. The amount of people that I speak to, obviously now because I train, we've got how many on tonight? 12 of us on tonight. In my face-to-face class, there's quite often 15 blokes there, and then when I train the Cert 4 and the diploma class, I do. I've probably got 20 people each night. So I sort of speak to a lot of people within the industry, and it's amazing how often I hear people telling stories about how they've had to go and redo something because it wasn't installed properly. I think it's just the fact that someone gets a type of cladding, whether it be a new weatherboard or it seems to be a matrix cladding, and they basically just go and fix it to how they think it should be done. And then someone who's in the know-how actually goes and looks at the supplier's website and basically gets a book like this and then realizes and goes, well, hang on, mate, you actually haven't done that how it needs to be done. You've got to pull it off and redo it. And at the end of the day, if you're the builder and that's the subby, I know lots of subbies who have just gone and basically done it because they thought that's how it needed to be done, and the builders basically said, well, look, sorry, mate, it's not done right, so pull it off and do it again, or I'm not actually paying you to do it. And then also there might be material that gets broken when you pull it off. So even if you're the builder and you've got your subbies, you want to make sure that they're aware of how it's got to be done. And even if you're the one installing it, just take the time to go, okay, well, actually, I haven't done this before. The night before, go on to CSR or James Hardy or whatever, just look on their websites and be able to pull the stuff off. And once you read it, you basically can't go wrong. All right, so that's that little bit about there. So obviously keep that, and if you feel like you need to read a bit more about a few products and how they need to be installed, by all means, actually go for it. So from there, what I'd like to do, guys, I'll bring up the Australian Standard, and we'll just talk about a few little things that I think need to be highlighted, because I think I did cover this, well, not cover, but spoke about it last week, about, with the amount of insurance claims, how much of it's got to do with waterproofing, whether that's internal or external, where it's actually getting through into our house. A huge part of basically a lot of the insurance work, or what we have to go back and guarantee. So I'm just going to close that down. I'll bring up the Australian Standard and just try and talk about a couple little things which I think are worth highlighting. So bear with me 1 second and I'll just bring it up. So this is the Australian Standard for waterproofing. I'll just make it a little bit smaller while I flick through the pages, and then once I flick through them, basically I'll just scroll down to the page we need to be at. So just remember, as always, if you get asked a question, whether it be multiple choice, and you're a bit stuck and you go, geez, I didn't cover that in the course, what is it? Just remember that whenever we open up our Australian Standards, I've gone the wrong way, that we're going to have a table of contents, and definitions is always a good place to start. So last week we did our brickwork. A lot of us probably didn't know that with our control joints, that they were actually into 3 different types, with our expansion joint, our contraction joint, and I've forgotten the other one, but basically our 3 different joints. So if you're going, geez, what is that? Then you can go to the definitions to find it. And just like when we did our subfloor, and we had to work out, actually it was roughs, our slabs and footings, and it was talking about the depth of the actual strip footing, of how much it needed to be. And there was a little symbol there that said DF and then DS. And we're like, geez, what the hell does that mean? Go to your definitions if you get stuck, and hopefully that might put you on the right direction to actually maybe give you a bit of understanding to understand that question. And that's where you'll get a lot of your limitations as well in this first part. So for those who've been practicing their multiple choice, and it says, according to the Australian standards, how long is a slab? And when we look in there, it'll say, the Australian Standard only deals with slabs up to 30 metres. So that's where you can go. And on this one of the ones that I find is, if we look at it here, you don't need to highlight it, but we'll talk about this a bit later, is about a backing rod and a bond breaker. So we're going to see some pictures later on that pop up about how to do waterproofing. And we're going to see a thing on there that says a backing rod. And most people say, what the hell is a backing rod? Because none of us really use them. So we'll read it now since it's on the page. It's a section of closed cell foam made from flexible plastics. And you'll see that when we see the pictures a bit later on. And then when they go a bond breaker, Adam, what's a bond breaker? So as far as the standards go, a bond breaker is a system that prevents the membrane being bonded to the substrate, bedding or lining. So put that in layman's terms, depending on how you do your waterproofing, it would be like that fiberglass tape that we use. That would be an example where that actually sits in the corner of our internal wall in a shower or whatever it's going to be, and it actually stops the membrane bonding to the substrate, which is our wall lining. So that's what your bond breaker is, something in between what we roll on and what it's actually sticking to. So there's a bit of an explanation that'll pop up a little bit later on. But if you see a few things you're not sure of, another one here where it says basically a hob. So most of us, when we're doing this questions later, me personally, if someone said to me, oh, Adam, can you go and build that hob? Or what's a hob? Maybe it's me being a carpenter doing a lot of baths. I straight away think a bath hob. I'm building a hob to put the bath in so the tiler can come and put his tiles on. But when they're talking about it here, they're talking about the upstand at the perimeter of a shower. So I know that when I was in Queensland and maybe in the renovation which we used to do, that we used to quite often create a hob out of Hebel bricks. So there would be basically, just put them around the outside of the shower base, and then they would be waterproofed over. We would basically tile it, and then we would get a shower screen then to actually come and fit that basically tiled hob that we had made. So just don't think when you go hob, you're thinking of a bath. We need to be, as per this standard, it's talking about around about a shower. And there's a few other ones in there. Don't need to go on too much more about those. I'll just scroll down to the first part that I've got highlighted. So one thing that you're probably going to be asked in multiple choice, and you guys might be realizing this when you're doing your multiple choice and you're putting the answer in and you're getting it wrong, and you go, geez, I thought it was that. And you might remember next time when you go to do it, geez, I got that wrong 5 times. The fall in the shower is actually 1 in 100, not 1 in 80. but we'll highlight where these are anyway. So now we're in actually, I want to get to section 3, which is on page 12. It's probably the first part that we sort of got to do with us building and making sure we understand what we need to do. So here on falls in floor levels, so I've got highlighted in my book, that part there. For general bathroom floor area, the minimum floor waste shall be 1 in 100. And then it does say notes for information on falls in floor finishes, see Appendix B. And we'll sort of get onto that as a little bit later on. But basically 1 in 100 is what we're after. So with this book, guys, I actually don't have tabs in my waterproofing standard, purely just because it's not, I don't find it nearly as complicated or as much information in it as what's in, say, our 2870 or a 1684. So I just highlight these, and I know I can quickly flick through the pages and find it. But if you want to tab it, by all means, you could call it falls in floor finishes. So then a little bit more then here on our shower floors, because that's just got to do with our floor finishes. So now this is to do with our showers. So if we have a look here, basically for showers, areas with a vertical separation between the shower area and the wet area, such as a shower screen or a hob, a step down or a water stop, the fall in to the waste only needs to be 1 in 100. But if it doesn't have any of those, then basically it needs to be 1 in 80. So that's the two differentials where people might maybe get confused. So highlight those ones there, and that's the difference between when you need basically 1 in 80 or 1 in 100. And we'll see some pictures later on in the back of the standard that sort of, show us when we, because you might be thinking, geez, when would be the next time, I've never done a something without making it enclosed. But think, you might be doing a shower change room. And you've got there with 6 showers in a row, there's no screens on them, like you do in the footy clubs or in the gym or whatever, and they would then need to have a different fall on them. All right, so when we come down here, and same again, this is more targeting it at probably the guys who are doing their kitchen and bathroom license, but I'll just train it as if we do have some of those guys. I don't like to skim over because we go, I've got no one here who's doing that license, so let's go through it quickly. So I just like to show some guys basically how it recommends in the standards. Basically, we should be doing our notching for our shower trays and so on. So this here is basically showing us our studs, and they've notched that out so the shower tray can actually sit underneath it. So the reason we do that, so that when the water basically hits the wall, it basically comes down here and then channels into basically the shower, and it can't actually obviously get up over that lip. So the reason we obviously have basically got this down here, it's got to go into the tray, and then we always have a sealant underneath it. We don't put that hard up against it because, as we know, timber moves, concrete moves, and we don't want it sitting hard on it because something's got to give if it starts to move. So we have a gap there and put a silicone around it, or underneath it I should say. And then our backup is always going to be this lip, so if something does get behind, it's really going to then come and fall out. And a story on that, if you're sick of hearing my story, say, Adam, we're sick of your story, shut up for a while. Yeah, can I make it bigger? No worries, Valavan. But I had a house that I bought. It was built in the late 60s, and I lived in it for a while, then moved out and rented it. And the floor was terrazzo, that old polished concrete they used in the 60s. Well, they did in Queensland anyway. And mine had actually cracked, and I wasn't aware of it when the renters were using it. And so the crack in my concrete basically shower, because the whole floor of the bathroom was terrazzo, basically started to leak through onto the floorboards, and then it rotted all the floorboards. And once I realised it had happened, I basically went and did a bit of a patch job where I sort of ground out the cracks and Sikaflexed it and so on. And then once the tenants moved out and I sold it, I did a bathroom renovation on it. So I was trying to see if the insurance company would actually pay for it to be done, because I said, look, this is the issue I've got. And he came out, and the first thing he checked was there sealant underneath the wall lining. And he said, mate, there's no actual sealant under there, so your water's got up over basically behind your sheet lining, gone over the back, and that's why it's basically been done. So therefore, it's not to Australian standards, so no, insurance won't cover it. And I was sort of like, well, mate, actually, it wouldn't have gone up over the top, because as you can see, the step out of the bath, the shower hob itself, is only about 100 mil, so it would have gone out the doorway before it went up and over the lip. And it's gone through the cracks in basically my shower base. That's where it's gone through. And he kept trying to tell me, no, that because this didn't meet Australian standards, they wouldn't cover it. And anyway, at the end of the day, that's beyond the point, but just be aware that it needs to actually be like that. to actually be compliant. You know, whether your inspector or whoever's coming out is going to get down closely enough and look to see if there's sealant under there, but yeah, it needs to actually be there. So that's showing us how we put in a shower tray. And then this one here is basically showing us on the other side. So same thing again, they've got their whatever's underneath your shower base, shows a shower tray, and then the door's obviously got to be able to sit on the inside, so when the water hits it, it tunnels down there. And then it shows us how we basically do the outside of the bathroom area. So this is going to depend obviously on what our scenario is, but this basically shows us we've got some sort of membrane tile bed, and then some basically silicone along here as well, so that as the water runs down, it doesn't actually run down and be able to get through to our floor. So we need sealant around the bottom as well. So that's just what I wanted to show you, that one there. So I'll show you some stuff on bath hobs. So when we come down here, it's pretty much the same type of thing. So this is baths and spas. Now, if someone basically would like to know how to basically install a bath, there's a book that basically Builder Registration sell. It's not something that I use a lot when I teach out of, because I find that basically all the guys that I normally train, other than this online class, are normally DBU or carpenters basically. But if you're wondering about, okay, I want to be more hands-on and see how this happens, there's a great book by Alan Staines. He's a guy who writes a lot of carpentry books. He's got one there, you chippies might know it, if you're ever doing a pitched roof, and Brenko showed me this book last week, he's got it as well. It shows you pretty much step by step, if you've got to do a pitched roof, how you build it, the span tables to work out how big the members need to be, the bevels to do, your plumb cut and your bird's mouth and things like that. But he's also got one there that pretty much is how to build a house from start to finish. And it's great. There's big pictures in it. It shows you how to do site set out, shows you how to do a bath hob, stand frames, all this stuff. So if you're that DBM category, but you'd like to know more hands-on about how to do it, let me know. It only costs about $60, and if you don't want to get it through us, I'm sure you can get it online as well. I've got a copy of it. I just lent it to one of my students, but I can show you at the end of the lesson what it's called if you're interested. So yeah, that's back to this. If you wanted to actually learn how to build a bath, it would show you in there how to do it. So, but the bits I want to show you is then these parts here. So it's pretty similar to our shower. We're obviously notching out our stud so the rim of our bath can go in there, and then our wall lining, and then we have our sealant underneath it. So there are a few different basic ways where it shows here how we can do it. So just be aware that what we want to do, guys, it doesn't show it on this picture, but in between your studs, you need to have noggins basically above like the rim of your bath. And the reason that you do that is, one, it's a good way of actually holding your bath in place so it doesn't move too much, but we need to be able to nail the bottom of these sheets off. So just like when we're putting plasterboard or something on and we got to screw it off at closer measurements at the bottom into our bottom plate, it's the same as the bottom of the sheet when it goes into the bath. So we put those noggins in so we can fix our sheets off. And also quite often it's not uncommon to put some form of rail or a batten basically underneath to support the bath. So yeah, something like this one here, where you might actually still do this scenario here, but then have some sort of batten, so then your rim of your bath is actually supported the whole length of the bath, just rather than on each stud. So yeah, a couple of pictures there that you might want to read through, and this then shows us if you've got like a bath that's actually not checked into your studs, which is pretty common these days, where it sort of looks like it's freestanding and you build the bath and it's set out a little bit from the wall. So that yeah, basically shows us how we need to do that and have a minimum of 100 millimeters. All right, so I'll just scroll through a couple of more of these. Yeah, that's a bit old school. Some of these ones in here, but we're talking about going around door jambs and so on. Don't need to cover too much of that. So what I was talking to you guys before about the hob construction, I'll just quickly scroll down to it. I'm looking for page 25. So this is then when it talks about hob construction. So just be aware we're talking about showers, and it talks about how we need to do it there. And what I want to talk to you a little bit now is, so I'm trying to get the right page. I might have gone too far. I'm going for page 27. Is basically about our different bond breakers. So I'm going to come back here. So with our bond breaker installation, so remember where we said what our bond breaker was? We've got our backing rods, we've got our bond breaker, which as I described as being that, whatever type of system you use, but we've probably all seen that fiberglass sort of matting that we roll out and put on our joints. So basically it says here, bond breakers shall be included at wall floor, hob wall junctions and movement joints. And where the membrane is bonded to the substrate, bond breakers shall be of the type compatible with the flexibility class of the membrane used. So just want you to be, and this wouldn't be something that you're going to be asked in the interview, but I find, because we do some questions on this a little bit later on, that I just like to cover what these actually mean. So I just might have had one or two guys just recently join. If you just joined in, guys, if you don't mind just chucking yourself on mute, and when you want to talk, just talk, because I can sort of hear myself coming back through, and it sounds a bit confusing for me. So yeah, so with the membrane classes, so it says we need to actually have a bond breaker that actually works with our membrane. So our membranes are basically broken down into 3 classes, so 1, 2 and 3. And the way that works is, this is a bit beyond my knowledge, so I'm not a waterproofer, but the way that I understand it is that when they test basically these bond breakers and how basically much they will flex, there's a percentage there. So as we read on that last page, we need to have a bond breaker that actually suits the membrane class. So that's why it says here that it needs to basically, from membrane, class 1, basically no greater than 60%. And so basically until it breaks. So I'm sure that if you went to Sellies or somewhere, they would have this testing lab where they would have it. There's some machine that stretches it, measures how far it actually goes before it breaks, and that would be at 60%. So it tells us there the minimum bond breaker or tape width at the bridge, to bridge joints opening up 5 millimeters, has to be at least 75 millimeters with a backing rod if we're using a class 1 membrane. So then the class 2, basically that break point is between 60 and 300%. And if we're going to use a bond breaker or a tape, then it needs to be 35 millimeters and there's no backing rod on it. And then the membrane 3 is anything that's going to go over 300%, then our tape only needs to be 12 millimeters wide. So I wouldn't be too concerned about this, because normally when you go, I would be very surprised if anyone was selling something these days that wasn't of the highest durability. And I'm sure whatever system you use, whether you use Davco, I can't think of any other waterproofing names, but if you went in there, they're actually going to sell you, basically the whole kit and caboodle. You're going to know, okay, this membrane goes with this type of bond breaker. So I think it'd be very unlikely that they're going to be selling something that's this weak, because no one would use it. So don't be too stressed about it. And that's why you've got to be careful also when you buy stuff. Basically from the shelf, it'll say, if you're buying, say, I'm just familiar with Davco because I've used it a bit. If you buy, say, the Davco membrane, and it'll recommend that you actually use Davco bond breaker tape such and such. And they're recommending that tape because it's their own and they want to sell it, but also they're knowing that they've tested that tape and it actually works with this membrane. So if you're always, if you're doing waterproofing, you can't go wrong. Read the instructions, and if you do, basically the parts that it tells you and buy the equipment they tell you, you really can't go too wrong when you're doing this basic sort of waterproofing. So then we'll get over to this next page, and this is going to that just really is a note talking a little bit about what I spoke about up here. So if when I explained this table it didn't make much sense, have a bit of a read through that and it might make a bit more sense for you if I didn't provide enough clarity on it. So this here, I'm just going to minimize this for a second, then I'll make it bigger. This is just giving us an illustration of basically those 3 different class membranes that they've actually talked about on the table before. So in the exercises we do coming up, we're actually going to draw these in. So I'll bring this up. This is actually showing, okay, this is what our wall substrate or lining is. So if you hear the word substrate, it's normally another word for basically what we're putting our paint to, what we're putting our waterproof membrane to. It's basically the part that's actually fixed on our house that we're going to be basically painting on, I suppose. So is that a question or just someone? No, cool. So,
you
got a question, Valavan? Yep.
Yep. I was going to ask about the, the percentage that they mentioned just above the previous page, the 60% and 60%.
Yep.
Yep. I didn't really get it, that percentage. What are they talking about in that percentage?
In this part here where I am?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, why don't I read through this and then we'll talk about it. So it says bond breakers for a class 1 membrane is basically low extensibility, which allow the membrane to flex rather than stretch. So when you look at it here, I said the way that I understand it, I said this is only my opinion, and so you're not going to be asked this in your interview, so I can just give my opinion rather than research it. That what they're doing, they're creating basically different types of waterproofing membranes, and what a class 1 is, it's actually for something that's designed to be flexible rather than stretch. So I understand 50%. Let's just say hypothetically you grabbed some form of, I don't know, silicon that you were going to use or some type of membrane, and say it was 100 millimeters long. If you stretched it and it got to basically 160 and then broke, you would know that at the elongation of the break, so when it sort of failed, was 60% of what it was when you put it in place. And so that's why these first membranes, they don't flex nearly as much as the other ones. So they don't stretch nearly as much as these other classifications. So that's just talking, like, when we talk about timber concrete's a better example. And we go about, okay, if concrete's 25 MPa, and then if it's 30 MPa, we know that 30 MPa concrete is stronger than 25. It's very similar to this here. So what they do, they actually measure it in a percentage of how far it can actually stretch before it breaks. So obviously so this one here can stretch anywhere between 60% and to 300%. So if I work my round figures again, if I had something that was 100 millimeters long and we stretched it, if it went 3 times bigger than what it was and then it actually broke, then we know that actually creates, it's 300%. So that's basically talking about how far it will stretch before it breaks. And then this part here just tells us then about what size tape we should be using for that membrane for it to stretch like that. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. I said, have a read over it. If it doesn't, I can probably send you some information from Sellies or something. But yeah, don't be too caught up on it. I don't want you to spend heaps of hours researching how long a bit of silicon will stretch before it breaks, because it's not really that, as soon as that's that important, it's not something you'll be quizzed on. We're just trying to let you be aware of these different types of membranes, and because that just might be something that might pop up in a multiple choice about membranes. So yeah, so back to this one here. Yep, so Tom's saying there that they use duct tape. So is that something that you've seen used, Tom, is duct tape? No, you're just taking the piss? Or you were just saying that's how far it could actually go? I won't say you're taking the piss like I wasn't having a go at you. Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, no, I just wouldn't know because I don't do waterproofing anymore, and there's always so many new products where you go and you see them. I remember when I did my waterproofing, it'd be 6 years ago now, and my old man owns a hardware store, and I went and saw his rep and said, I'm going to do this myself, what do I need? And I was really surprised that he told me that when I put the basically my sheets together, that I forget now off the top of my head, but basically if the gap, I think it was if it was less than 3 mil, I could just basically gap it, and then the waterproof membrane he was going to give me, I could just paint straight over the gap, and that was even on the internal corners. And I was sort of going, geez, that sounds a bit iffy, because I'd only ever seen actually people use the matting. So now, even though he said that, I'm not going to do it. I'll still use his product, but I'll get the matting that was 150 mil and so on. And yeah, so I'm sort of a bit old school. I like to see someone do it first before I do it. So yeah, when you said duct tape, I knew you didn't mean like the silver duct tape. I thought that might have been something that they were selling these days that was actually there because it stretched so far. But no, cool. So back to this. So this is our membrane 1. So it shows us our wall substrate. And as you can see here, because it's a membrane 1 and it doesn't stretch very far, it tells us we have to use a backing rod. So if we couldn't remember what a backing rod was, we would go back to our definitions, and it said how it had to be made of foam or something. And we would put that in our corner. Then we put our tape over there. If you do Tom's waterproofing, it's going to be duct tape. So we put our basically our tape over our backing rod, and then basically from there we put our waterproof membrane on. So that's what that checkered sort of pattern is that waterproofing membrane. So it shows us how we then do a class 2. So because class 2 is a lot more flexible, you can see that the backing rod's been taken out. So it shows the same thing here. Basically, there's our waterproof membrane. It shows that we've got our bond breaker in there, and basically straight over the top. And that's obviously where our wall meets the floor. And then it shows us a picture of how we can now actually do our class 3 membranes. So you can see there's no actual, there's no matting or anything there. We're just using a flexible sealant or a fillet. And it could be, a lot of the guys these days probably use Sikaflex. Basically put that in and then they can membrane straight over the top of it. So that's basically our 3 different types of our membrane class 1, class 2 and class 3. So I just basically maybe highlight those. And I said you won't need to go into nearly as much depth as what we've spoken about here, but just have an understanding of it, and then maybe if you do get a question on a bond breaker, you can actually reference that and have a bit of a look at it. So let me just scroll down. Now with this Australian standard, I will just cover this. I like to try and let the guys, now I'll actually let you guys try and find it when we do something a little bit later on. So we'll come back to that one. And I actually find this standard a bit dicky to use, maybe because we're so used to using the 1684 and basically the 2870, where we go in, we use our span tables and we find stuff. I find a lot of the stuff to find when they ask us for measurements about how far we need to waterproof on either side, how far above the bath and things like that. Me personally, I find it easy just to look at the pictures. And I've sort of made a lot of assumptions, I presume, where I haven't been able to find the answer that's written in the text. So I've then found it in basically the in the drawings.
Really?
And one of them.
Really?
Sorry, you got a question there?
Really? No. No.
I might just chuck that on mute for a second, guys. Someone's got their cat there or likes to pretend they're a cat, but that's all right. So yeah, so I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so I've found that sometimes it's easier to find basically in the pictures. So as we basically scroll down, we're gonna basically see just a heap of pictures here. I'll make this a bit smaller for a second, where it actually outlines how much we need to waterproof either side of the junction and so on that I spoke about. There's a couple there too where one of the questions I get asked a lot has got to do with the required floor waste. And to be honest with you, I can't find anything in here where it actually specifically basically states when and when you don't need it. But I've just interpreted what I'm pretty sure is correct from the drawings that are on here. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I'll let you guys try and find those answers and come to your interpretation. And then after that, we'll actually basically go through them. So here's the pictures that I'm talking about. So you can see here it's showing with the shower, that it's got to be waterproof to 1800 from the finished floor level, 40 mil either side of the junction and so on. So I won't go through all those because I'll let you guys actually find those because that'll be the answers later on. But just be aware that these do change depending on basically if it's got a shower screen and then how big that shower screen is as well. So that sort of starts, puts us in, without giving the answers about what becomes an enclosed shower or an unenclosed shower, and that's going to change our waterproofing requirements. And then probably the only other thing that I'll just cover without telling you the answers too much is, let me turn this around. This table here we might have used previously, and it comes out of, this is pretty much identical to what's in our building code. So it's really horses for courses, wherever you like to find your information. But this talks about our waterproofing requirements, and we probably have seen this before when we did an exercise a few weeks ago about it was a subfloor, I think, and we worked out how deep the footings were, what our ventilation requirements were, and then we spoke a little bit about what our waterproof requirements in there. So you can find it in here in your Australian standard, or you can also basically find it in your building code, whichever you're more comfortable in actually finding your information. And that then actually triggered something that I wanted to show you. And this is one thing too, I didn't think much of this, and it might be worded wrongly in our questions we're doing tonight. And I never thought much of it because some of the questions we get later on talks about how far we need to waterproof basically above our bath and our basins. So don't get them too confused, because if you look at these pictures here, it actually says oh no, I'm in the wrong spot. Yeah, sorry, here. So it says WR. So it's actually showing us that it needs to be water resistant for 150 millimeters. So just be careful when you're actually, it says WR again, water resistant. It doesn't actually say waterproof. So it does say you've obviously here that you've got to waterproof the wall junction, so actually all the junction part itself. But just be mindful when you come down onto this table, sometimes it says waterproof and water resistant, and I actually never paid that much attention, I suppose, to the questions. I just went, okay, I'm doing waterproofing, and just put them all in at sort of, I suppose, the 150. But just, yeah, be aware there is a difference between water resistant and waterproofing. So when you're doing that a bit later on, read the question and then have a look at it and you'll see the answer. So we're getting close to sort of 7:20. So rather than start the exercise, what I'd like to do is, and I know a lot of you guys have done this exercise before, so when we come back, because I know that you guys, I don't like you to have to sit here for 3 hours to sort of hear something totally new. So when we come back, what I'd like to do is, I'll just bring up this question that we'll talk about. Just want to make sure I got the right one. No, it's not that one there. All right, so this one here, when we'll have a 15-minute break and we'll come back, and I want to talk to you. It says here, what are the window requirements? So depending on how you've actually done this course before, I always interpret this a little bit differently, and well, it's not interpret, and just what I teach might be different. So worth hanging around that, and I'll talk to you about how we do safety glass and stuff like that. And won't be anything you'll be asked in your interview. We want to know some things about it, but I'll probably teach this a bit differently to how you've done it before. So when we come back from our break, I'll take you through that in the building code and how we work out our safety glass. And then from there, basically we'll just be going on to doing these questions. So if you feel like you don't need to hang around, by all means, basically take off. But definitely come back after the break. I'll go through that, and then I'll be saying, okay, let's go through and now work out these questions. And then once we've done that, we'll go through them, and then I'll give you that other diagram to actually do, which some of you guys might have already done, which we draw basically our bath hob and stuff in it. And then that's pretty much all we've got to do. So definitely hang around and do the safety glass, and then from there, see if you want to talk about the bath hob and everything else. But yeah, let's hang around. 5 books. No, so that's a question from Tom, and I will actually cover this with everybody. He's saying he's been told he can only take 5 books in for his multiple choice. Is that the norm? No, it's not. Take in everything, because it's sort of funny that like they send you the email and it says, please bring these books and nothing else. But no, definitely take in all your ACTS or your standards. Don't take in your, you just can't take anything that's loose. So don't take in your builder registration folder. Don't take in a copy of your contract. You can take a copy of your contract in when you go for your interview, but definitely any book that you've bought through builder registration, or even if you didn't buy it through us, but we've recommended, hey, you need this, and it's an Australian standard or some sort of legislation, take them all in, because they definitely let you use them, and you want to have your own versions there. So Valivant's heard of the Gyprock manual. No, so something like that. So this is Valivant's question. I don't know if you sent it to everybody. No, so things like manuals, no, you can't take in. There'd be nothing wrong with taking that into your interview, so that then if you wanted to talk about it in your job, you could then reference and say, okay, this is how it's done. So definitely no sort of manuals to the multiple choice. But it doesn't hurt to take them in as part of your portfolio when you go in for your actual one-on-one interview. So what would, so yeah, what would they say then, mate? Tom just said to me, why would they say to only bring those in? But I have absolutely no idea. And I was the first thing when I saw that, I'm like, geez, really? I've just spent 12 weeks and I've got all this marked, and you tell me that I can't take it? I honestly don't know why they say that. And yeah, so I then asked the guys who had been in previously, hey, is this true? And I was advised, no, take them all in. And anyway, the worst thing they can do is say no, but I've got no reason why They say that, but I've never heard of anyone who hasn't been allowed to access their standards or their codes. So I've got no idea why they do it. Some poor bugger probably reads that and then goes in there and struggles because he hasn't got his own book. So definitely take them all in there. All right, cool. So let's basically go and have basically a 15-minute break. I'll have a bite to it. We'll come back and we'll go through that part of the building code. So I'll see you in 15. Alright guys, welcome back. So I'll just show this part out of the building code. This is probably something new to most of you guys because I don't know if the other trainers sort of go down this path with that. So I'll just go through it. Just give me a second and I'll bring up my building code. I should have done that during the break and I didn't, so just bear with me a second. Alright, so if you're wondering what I'm talking about, if you missed the end part before we went on our break, it's got to do, can't find it now, is this question here. So it says, what are the window requirements? So you can see on this picture here, it starts to show us, some spaces between basically where the window is compared to where the shower is, the distance between, basically the top of the bath and the bottom of the window. So there's lots of little things in there. I don't worry too much about that drawing and getting you guys to answer it because a lot of those are actually sort of in these questions here. So, but I've found in the past when students have gone ahead and tried to tackle this, they weren't too sure exactly what it was asking them with the window requirements. And me personally, I don't know exactly what they want you to say either. But what I will do is just talk about the way that I've interpreted that, and I'm sure what I'm going to cover now will sort of cover every scenario anyway, and not anything you'd be asked, I don't think, in an interview, but just for your own knowledge as well. I'm one of these guys now, probably because I'm a trainer. I know when I was a student, I was all about, yeah, that's great. I just want to basically pass so I can get my license or I can get my qualification, whereas I suppose now because I'm a trainer, I like to know as much as I can, so if people ask me, I don't look a deal and say, oh, I don't know, even though there's stuff that I don't know. So what I'm going to get is when we come to our building code over here, let me just find the section we're going to, and I'm pretty sure it should come under glazing. Let's just have a look and see how we go. And I will make this bigger when I find the page that I'm after. All right, so the way that I've interpreted that drawing is they're trying to make us aware of this picture here. So as you can see, if you're not familiar with this, this is within our bathroom, the sort of different scenarios that we would get. And so on these different types of windows or shower screens, whatever it would be, we need to have graded safety glass. So this building code, if we read it, the thing here is identification of glazing requirements for bathrooms, en-suites and spa rooms. So this is then telling us basically what grade this safety glass in our rooms need to be. So as you can see, this is what I think they're trying to get at in that picture on here, that if your window is basically 2 meters above the bottom of your bath, so the bottom of your window is more than 2 meters from the bottom of your bath, that window doesn't need to actually be safety glass. It can just be a normal window. So then it shows us these other types of glass, how strong do they need to be. So these windows here on the outside, because they're actually not more than 2 meters up, they need to be type D safety glass. So then our shower screens, it's a bit hard to tell which way this opens and so on, but I presume, I'm only taking a guess, that maybe A is basically the one that opens and slides back, needs to be type A. These others are type B, and then this one here that's fixed is type C safety glass. So yeah, and that's why we get, you probably see it a lot now, when I hear so many stories too where people have actually ordered windows, and not for a bathroom, but basically windows that have been imported, and they've gone to install them and they've realised they haven't got the sticker on them that it says, these are Australian standard 1288 or whatever they have to be to actually meet the specification, whether it be for energy rating or whatever else. I hear that story occasionally. It's not like it happens every day, but I'm sure most of us are probably familiar with at least one story of they know someone who's been on a site and the windows actually haven't been up to scratch. And as far as the way that they're actually made to our standards. So that's with this glass here. So when you go, okay, that's great, Adam, what's A, B, C, and D? So when you come back here, that just tells us a little bit what I sort of explained about, it needs to be safety glass and so on. But then when you come down here, this explains what actual our different types are. So as you can see here, these are different types of glass that the building code actually recommends. So we've got safety wired glass. So if we're going to use safety wired glass, the nominal thickness, if it's going to be greater or equal to than 6 millimeters, then the maximum basically area of that pane of glass we can use is 2.5 square meters. So if we were going to use safety wide glass and it was basically 6 mil or greater, then it'd be 2.5 be the maximum size of the glass, and we could then use that for our glazing as type A, B and C. So basically these ones here, we could use that for there. So then these other ones over here, the other type of glass they recommend is safety organic coated glass, and then it tells us basically that comes in a few different sizes. So if we're going to use safety organic coated glass and it's only going to be 3 millimeters thick, we can't use that any bigger than a 1 square meter basically pane. So that's obviously, as we would know, isn't going to be a huge amount of glass. So then if we were going to use a 4 millimeter one, we could use a pane up to 1.5 square meters. If we're going to use one that was 5 millimeters, it's going to be a 2 meter area we can use. Or if we're going to use something that's basically 6 or greater, then basically it can do 3 square meters. And so that organic safety glass can be used in any scenario, A, B, C or D. So what limits on how obviously big the pane is determines on how thick it is. So that's sort of, I said, probably the only main part you need to take out of that is just knowing this measurement here, that basically 2 meters above the bottom of the bath, and then that window doesn't need to actually be have safety glass on it. So I don't know when you guys have done it previously, you know, if your trainers went into that much detail. And as I said, don't be stressed. You're not going to go, geez, am I going to have to remember that for my interview? No, you're not. I just like to, when I see things on these questions that we do, just to go into that bit of extra detail, because at the end of the day, we're training you guys to actually get your license, but also we're trying to set you up for success afterwards as well. So that's why I like to throw in other things that might help you out down the track. And I'm a big believer in being able to use the building code. And I know that when I did my first certificate 4 years ago, I finished it and really didn't know much about it. And then once I understood when I was on site using that book and how to use it, it's basically, it's the greatest tool we've got. And you guys are probably noticing that now when you're starting to use that building code more, maybe checking stuff from site. And yeah, so I like to just throw in a few other things you might not be familiar with to understand that. So basically from there, I'll just show you this this little part here as well. So it says what are the 4 steps to waterproofing. So you might have spoken about this in your class previously. It's just a little document. I might email it over. It's nothing major. So let me just maximize it. This is just basically something that came from a supplier, and what we need to be aware of, and so more for your kitchen and bathroom guys, is actually the 4 steps for waterproofing. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we do the surface preparation. So that means make sure there's no dust, no grease or anything on the surface that we're going to waterproof. Then we want to prime the area that we're going to waterproof. Then basically number 4 is put in our bomb breakers. And then number 5 is put on our membrane. So that's really just designed so that when people go in and if they're talking about, you know, they're doing something to do with their waterproofing in their license, that they actually talk about all those. Because this one here, these 2 here are probably not so much clean the area. Most people say, oh yeah, get rid of the dust and so on. But this here is something like the priming of the wet areas is something that, yeah, a lot of people don't do. And it's bloody expensive. I know the bathroom that I do and did it myself, the primer costs more than the membrane itself. And if you're wondering, if you're not sure what priming is, guys, basically what the primer does, it actually grips onto the substrate, in this case probably being our villa board or whatever it's going to be. The primer actually grips to the villa board, which then allows the waterproofing to grip to it. Because sure, we look at, oh, I can paint that waterproofing straight onto the villa board, and it looks like it sticks, but we know how long we've got to guarantee this for, and it might not last. If that's got a guarantee of that waterproofing membrane at 25 years, that's based on that wall lining being primed with that type of primer. So if you just go and put your membrane straight on it, you might find that, yeah, it's all good, but in 6 years it starts to fail. And that's one thing that, yeah, a lot of guys don't do. I shouldn't say in waterproofing don't do, but I've had a lot to do with paint. And I probably told you my old man owns a hardware store, and I used to work in there occasionally, and I was actually just a lot of his paint, and he sent me on some paint courses with Dulux and Wattle and a few things like that, and I learned a lot about basically the different paints, and yeah, they're basically designed to actually have a primer, because if you, even though it looks like it's all good, the primer's actually got to grip the substrate that you want the top coat to go to, and where it's mostly not done, and we've probably all seen it, is kill rust and those sort of metal priming paints. So what they're starting to come out with is a lot of paints now which are self-priming, but if you read the fine print on those items, even on your paint, it'll talk basically about how rough that surface should be, and if it's basically a certain amount of rust or corrosion, then you need to put rust treater on it first, scrub it back with a wire brush, then put your primer on, and then put your top coat on. And a lot of people don't want to, they go, oh, stuff that, I just want to paint it. It's Kill Rust, it'll work. But we've got to remember we're guaranteeing these, and especially being a bathroom. So just make sure that if you are using a membrane that it says that it stipulates it needs a primer, put the primer on there. Because as I said, when they test it to how long it's going to last and stuff like that, they test it as per their procedures with their primers. So they're basically the 4 steps. Basically do the surface preparation to clean it, put our primer on, do our bomb breakers, which is our sealants, our tapes or whatever, and then basically put our waterproof on. And it goes into more detail how to do that. So I'll send that over. But that, if you're wondering, because I find a lot of people when they do this exercise, if I don't explain that to them, they start looking through their Australian standard for the 4 steps of waterproofing, and they spend 20 minutes and they can't find it. So it's actually not in your Australian standard. So from there, let's just go along and tackle this. So those guys who have done it before, you might want to redo it. If you want to log out, that's up to you. But yeah, basically, let's go through and do it. I know Valavan's got to do it. So just start at number 3, Valavan. It gives us a scenario. So there's a bathroom on a 2nd story of a brick veneer home. We've got a yellow tongue floor, so it's obviously going to be some like a timber floor, and a water-resistant plasterboard lining on our walls. So basically from there, go and answer these questions. And the one that you might get a little bit stuck on, I think, is number 12. And yeah, so see how you go, and yeah, if you can't get it, just leave it and we'll talk through it. So have a crack at those from number 3 to number 12, and I'll be sitting here if you've got any questions, and if you guys have got any questions outside anything else, we can use this time to talk about that, and if not, I'll just sit here patiently, and when you're done, just type in the box done, and we'll move on and go through those answers. Cool, thanks Jeff. Just chill out for a minute or two and wait for Valavan and one or two of the other guys to finish it. Thanks Valavan. All right, cool. Looks like that it, guys. We'll basically go through these. Give me a second. So let's read through them. So what are the window requirements? Well, we covered that. And if you did do this previously with someone else, a lot of people basically look in the windows and the ventilation section, and it talks about if you're going in a habitable room, that window needs to be 10% of what the floor area is of the room. So if you did do that, that's actually not wrong. It's just not what I sort of steer you towards here, because a bathroom's not a habitable room. Those 4 steps we spoke about prepping, priming, our bomb breakers and our waterproof. So what is the timber floor requirement? So it talks about our standards to basically the whole floor. So is a floor waste required? This is one of the questions I was basically talking to you before, and I wanted for you guys to see if you could find it. So, and by all means, if I'm going through some of these and you get different, by all means just say, hey Adam, can you stop and explain that to me? So by all means, yeah, don't just think because I've got it written there that I'm 100% right. Yeah, as you've seen, if you've done this stuff in the past, you have noticed that I get stuff wrong. But yes, this one here, when it says, is a floor waste required? So this is the only way that I could actually interpret. I couldn't find anything in the building code or the Australian standard that actually says, you know, when you do and when you don't actually need a floor waste. And for those of you who live in a reasonably new home, or even think of a home that you live in at the moment, I know my house doesn't have a floor waste in it. So that's how I know that obviously all houses don't need a floor waste, because it was only built, you know, about 18 months ago. So, you know, the way that I determined it from here was, if we look on page 40, so you look at this one here, this has got a shower screen, which is basically making that an enclosed shower. And therefore you can see it doesn't actually, the diagram show us that we need basically a floor waste in there. So then when I scroll down to this next page, you can see on here, this has got basically a much smaller shower, and when you, shower screen, and when you start to look at basically these showers, whether it be over a bath or wherever, if there is a screen that's that size, or it doesn't actually have one at all, you're then going to see that you start to get a floor waste where it says required. So that's the only way that I can actually find it, is by determining, as I said, the size of that screen, whether it becomes enclosed or unenclosed, and then interpreting the diagrams. Now to me that seems like a pretty dicky way to actually try and find something probably as important as a floor waste. But yeah, that's how I found it, and it's the only way that myself or any other students that I've trained have been able to find it either. So that's why I wrote in there that actually no, we don't, because out here you can see we've got an enclosed shower on our picture, so it's enclosed. So when we come to our standard, it shows our enclosed actually don't have to have it. So if you've got something different and you want to tell me why you got that, I'm all ears, but that's the way that we've interpreted these drawings in the past. Our internal corner requirements. So basically with that one there, it's 1800 millimeters up the corner and basically 40 millimeters either side of it. So we can see that there. There's lots of drawings in there where it shows that, and it talks about here waterproof the corner to 1800 millimeters from the finished floor level and 40 millimeters either side of the junction. So the waterproofing height, next one, the waterproofing above the bath height. So that's what I was talking about before. If you have a look at that, the bath, and I reckon this might be a bit of a typo in our material. It just says you've got to waterproof the bath and the wall junction, but you've got to make sure that that's water resistant to 150 millimeters above it. So I think what they're actually trying to get at is that what is the water resistant height, but as long as you're referencing those pictures, I said, if you've done this with a different trainer, he might have told you something different, but that's the way that I interpret it. The water resistance is 150 mil, and that's why quite often when we see things like this, if you've got it in a you've normally got your splashback and so on in your laundry with just some tiles, because they're obviously a water resistant material. Then the waterproofing above the floor requirements. So that's same again, depends on which scenario we're going with. So look at this one here, it's 150, but when we come back under where our enclosed showers are, it starts to show us here that we only need 25 mil. So that answer for that one there would be 25. So same thing again, if you're getting one or two of these wrong, just be aware that we need to know what type of shower is it. So it does say this one here is for unenclosed showers, and whereas when we come back to this one here, where's the other one? There'll be somewhere in where it talks about enclosed showers, and it'll basically give us that 40 mil. Let me come back. Anyway, you guys would have found it because no one's actually saying, hey Adam, I didn't get that. So it is actually 40 mil. So that's what that one there is. And so what is the fixing requirements for the water resistant board? Can it be glued? Well, no, we actually did that before. So when it's got tiles on it, basically it's got to actually be basically screwed. So then it says the waterproofing shower recess above the floor level. So yeah, that's basically 1800 millimeters. I sort of covered that one a little bit when I said the internal corners as well. And then, here's one that I should have mentioned. Sorry guys if you're looking at it for ages. What is the stud centers for a shower recess? Now that's actually not in there anywhere. To be honest with you, I don't know where I can find that in any sort of construction manual that I own, but just common practice is whenever I've done them is at 300 millimeters. So I don't know if anybody else does it a bit differently. And a lot of people say to me, hey Adam, why is it basically 300? It's just what I was taught, and it's what I've always done, and I think it's to give probably a bit more stability also around that that shower basin. If everyone's got a better reason for it, then let me know. But it's just one of those things that I've done since I was a 17-year-old apprentice, and that's sort of what we did them at. But if you ask me where that was, I honestly couldn't tell you where that was. So it actually says 600 in the multiple choice, does it, Tom? Are you sure that's for the shower? Yeah, okay. Geez, okay, the guys, just out of curiosity, actually, when I was saying it might be 6, maybe that's what the actual minimum is. I said I can't find where that's actually listed. I'm probably going more with what's best practice, I suppose. Just like when we talk about, I don't know, with our concrete, even though basically the building code says that, it's got to be 20 MPa, we're nearly always finding that we're using at least 25 MPa. So I said, probably because I don't have a manual where it actually states 600. I've always, basically just done them at 300 because that was our acceptable practice. So I've got a couple of questions there relating to that. So thanks. I've got one there about the waterproofing above the bar. So thanks for that, Michael. I'll have a look. So page 50. Let's go and look at a question that, basically Michael's got here. So let me give you a second. Yeah, so maybe this is where it might, if you went to the table rather than the picture. So this is where Mike's saying about it, talks about that it's got to be waterproofed. What's this for the bath? Look at page 50 and where the wall junction. Yep, okay, so just trying to find it. Oh, so the walls, yep. So where that one's a little bit different, that's talking about the actual, I'm just going to read this in. I'll read this properly before I spit it out. So with that, that's what I'm getting to. Look at that picture I was talking about before above the bath. So this actually tells us that, the wall itself has to be basically 150 millimeters water resistant above the bath. But then if we've got a junction, like a corner basically, then it needs to It says the wall junctions and joints. The same thing again there, Michael. It just says it needs to be water-resistant junctions within 150 millimetres above the vessel or the extent of the vessel. So I just can't see there where it actually says that it's got to waterproof. Oh, here we go. It's this one here. So this is, yeah, inserted baths and spas. Yep. Okay, cool. So, yes, just have a look at that. That it's a bit hard to tell with that picture. Yeah, no, I suppose, yeah, so that would be, yeah, an inserted bath because it's checked into the wall. So you're right, so I didn't look that close to that drawing. So thanks for letting me know that, Michael. So when we look, so that's the bit of the difference. I got obviously tricked up them by that. So you've got to actually look at these, yeah, basically that says inserted baths, and then it says walls adjoining and so on. So it actually says here that it's got to be waterproof to 150 mil above it. But I'm presuming then when we're doing something that's not going to be checked into our wall, maybe like that, then our waterproofing, sorry, our water resistance still got to be 150. So I doubt you're going to get something to trick you up like that in your exam, but if you do, basically just have a look and see whether, you know, as it says there, whether it's the way that they describe it is basically whether it's checked in. So I've probably gone past that. Sorry, inserted is the word I'm looking for. So if it's an inserted bath, and I'm sure if we went back to our definitions, it would give us a definition of what an actual inserted bath means. So then we could go, okay, get clarity on that question, and then basically go and answer it. Cool. And Tom's just saying, yeah, with that talking about the spacing of the basically the studs on the shower tray. And I'm really surprised that it says that, Tom, because just thinking about it, if you're putting in a 900 shower tray, you're only getting one on the corner and then one sort of, you know, 2/3 of the way along, and then the rest of it's flapping. So that really surprises me that that's what it says. So yeah, I said I just haven't seen that talking about the checkout for a shower tray in a manual. Yeah, and Tom's going, he's hearing me as well. So yeah, I'm surprised. I might even try and track that down and just make sure that that's actually not a typo, because the last thing I'd hate is for you guys to be getting that in your multiple choice and yeah, basically putting in there that it's 600 and in actual fact it's you know, it's 450 or something less, because before Friday. Yeah, okay, I'll do my best. I don't know if I'll just check, because Steve's the guy who writes all the curriculum and he only does 2 days a week now, so I'll try and track him down. But I'm just going to make a note of this so I don't forget it. So let's write down shower tray stud spacing. All right, cool. That should be enough for me to actually figure that out, yeah. So, yeah, as we've all said, it doesn't seem to make much sense. But anyway, it's there for a reason, so let's find out why it's there, if it's a typo or not. All right, so back to these questions that I was doing. Yeah, so what is the Australian standard for waterproofing? Yeah, we'll just basically have a look at the front of your book, 3740. And then this is what we're talking about here. So people aren't sort of too sure how to answer this question. Basically just says, what are the requirements if a shower curtain is used in this situation? And the way that I've interpreted that, what they're trying to get us to find out, the way that I interpret the question is basically, if we put a shower curtain on, does that actually then become an enclosed shower? Because as we know, basically a shower curtain doesn't actually provide, you know, the same sort of protection to our outside areas as what a shower screen would. So that's the way I've interpreted that question. If you guys have interpreted any different, basically let me know. But this is the way that I sort of answer that question when people ask me. And if we come back to, let me come back here, 3.18.11. So on here it says unenclosed shower screen. So it just says here that an unenclosed shower screen, I'll make that a little bit bigger, consists of a frameless shower screen, unless the shower screen is fitted with seals and deflectors, a shower screen less than 900 millimeters long over the bath. So that's why we're seeing those different things about the floor base. And it says a shower area where a curtain is actually hung on a rod. So an unenclosed shower areas are not suitable for use directly adjacent to doorways unless the doorway is protected against the water exiting through the doorway. So basically from reading that, we can now determine that if we've got a shower curtain on there and it's on a rod, it actually becomes an unenclosed shower screen. but if we look back at our waterproofing requirements, it probably doesn't change it just because we've got a timber floor anyway, and we actually basically did the whole floor. The only thing that might change is if we look at our pictures on our standards, is basically how far up the wall we go. So that's yeah, don't be too stressed about it. I'll be really surprised if they're asking you in the VBA about you're building a house with a shower screen, what do you need to do? But that's what I'm getting at. If you find something that's a little bit hairy, go to your definitions, have a bit of a look, and then from that we could then determine, yes, that is now an unenclosed shower. So when I'm actually looking at these waterproofing requirements, what are the waterproofing requirements for basically a shower that's unenclosed? So hopefully that's covered that. I didn't want to sort of spend sort of heaps of time on that because I sort of tied up telling my war stories at the beginning. So yeah, basically I think for other than that one about the waterproofing above the bath, and yeah, we were all sort of pretty good with those. And so from there, what we there's really only two other things to do tonight. And if you like, this one will only take a second or two, so maybe we'll do this one first, and then you guys can basically quickly find those, and we can move on to the last part of the presentation. So just let me bring it up. And this is just purely copying some measurements out of your Australian standard. So some of them you've probably already know the answer for or done already. So just give me a second and I'll bring it up. Yep, so this one here. So you probably should have a couple of these in there. So let's just quickly go through those. All you've got to do is find the relevant picture basically in your Australian standard, and it's just missing the number. So talking about how far the waterproof to the corner, so either side, and then how high up and so on. So same thing again, you just want to have a look at the pictures, make sure you're not going to an enclosed shower and it should be unenclosed and so on. So I think we've got, let me just see how many of those we've got. I think we might have two, possibly three. Let me just bring my hard copy out. So yeah, I think we've only got two in there. So why don't you basically go through and do those. There's that one there that's up on the board, up on the screen, and then there's another one which has got an elevation basically of a bath, and there's no actual waste out the side. So go through and do those two, and we'll quickly basically tell you what the answers are, and then we'll go on to this next part about our hob construction. So Tom, if you're not actually basically typing at the moment, mate, tell me a little bit about your interview. So you probably did tell me this, but I've forgotten, and it's not that my memory's bad, mate. I just struggle when I actually don't see someone's face to know what we've spoken about. Are you going in for your multiple choice or straight in for your interview? Sorry, I'm just going to mute everybody too. Sorry, I did that because of all the feedback we had going on before.
Yeah, I'm going for multiple choice, mate.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you've obviously had the password and you've been able to practice?
Yeah, yep.
Oh, cool. That was another thing. Someone did actually ask me last week for access to basically get a log on. I don't know if you're here, but if anyone did ask me for a log on for multiple choice, I just emailed it over to Maxine who did it. So if you are actually on here tonight and you asked me last week, if you didn't get it, let me know and I'll follow it up again. Is there anything on the multiple choice that's really stumping you, mate, or you're all pretty good with it?
Oh, pretty right. Not too bad. I've got a lot of stuff from Master Builders too.
Yep.
I've got all their multiple choice. I've been going through that as well, just a bit of an extra. But,
yeah.
A lot of their stuff's all out of standards and tolerances, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Not so much out of the regs, but yeah, it's not bad.
Okay, and so, because you're actually down in Sale, aren't you?
Bensdale, yeah. We trained in Sale.
Cool. So did you have to come to Melbourne to do it, or have they got something out there where you can do it?
No, I've got to go to Docklands.
Oh, really? Okay, geez, I'm surprised. Because I know, a couple of years ago when guys were in regional areas, they used to sort of, run sessions and they'd come out and see you out there. But yeah, okay, so you got to come into Docklands to do it. So, yeah, so what time's your interview?
2 o'clock. So home in Peak Hour, nice.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing too, you'll probably, it's natural to be nervous, but quite often there's because we have so many people going through, that quite often you see some other builder registration guys there. So if you're one of those guys who, want a bit of gang mentality, I can probably find out who's there if you want, and they normally meet down in the cafe and just have a bit of a coffee or something before they go in, and you can probably sit next to someone who you know. Actually, I think quite often, I think they might even tell you now where you got to sit. they might sit down because everyone does different tests, and they might go, yep, Tom, you're here, Ben, you're there, and then they give you your test. So I'm not too sure. Is anyone who's still on here actually done their multiple choice? I'm just curious how they actually did your seating arrangements, whether they let you choose or whether you had to sit where they told you. No, I don't know. All right, but cool. Yeah, but definitely as far as... Sorry, mate, go ahead.
What's Greg up to?
Greg, Greg didn't join in tonight, but he was waiting on his result on his multiple choice, and then he's just got to go back and do his interview. So I would be pretty surprised if Greg didn't get it. Well, but to be honest, if any of you didn't get it, to be honest with you, because I don't know anyone personally who hasn't, but so I'm sure he would have got through, and now he was just waiting for confirmation to then to go back and actually do his interview. So the one thing sorry, go ahead.
It would have been good talking to him tonight, actually, but anyway, I thought, because he'd have his multiple choice, he'd have his results by now.
Yeah, do you want me to give you his number? He'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
that'd be
cool,
really good.
Because he's asked me for some other guy's number that I passed on. So bear with me a second. What I'll do, I'll forward you his details. So one second while these guys are... And once you've done those, Tom and I are chatting away, guys. Once you've done those measurements, let me know and I'll move on to the next part as well. So I'll just send this over to you, mate. Got that many screens open. I'm going to send an email and I can't bloody do it. Well, I'm going to forward this over to you. And all right, this is, I'll delete everything there so it doesn't confuse you. This is just his signature panel. All right, so hopefully that came over. So yeah, one thing too, which I haven't sort of covered yet in this course, but no doubt you've done it previously, just be aware of the angle of repose. Are you familiar with the angle of repose? And basically how that works?
Yeah, Steve went through it all with us. Yeah.
Yeah, because now just be aware, like I'll go into a lot of detail in a couple of weeks, but really just be aware that from memory what the guys told me, that it shows where the edge of the slab is. It then shows that there's an easement basically in the close proximity, and it basically just says something along the lines of, what do you think about this? And basically just got to, and the guys go, well, fuck, what do you mean, what do I think? So they interpret that it means, okay, make sure that doesn't fall into the angle of repose. So that's really all you need to know. Just make sure that you can't undermine your footings, and there's that angle basically that you can't sort of excavate within, and that angle starts at the actual bottom of your footing. So it doesn't start at the top, it starts at the bottom. And that's
so if I just want to put something short and then refer back to the book on the angle of repose, which I've got tabbed, so.
Yep. Okay, cool. No worries at all. Yeah, no, and that's all you need to understand. But they don't go into too much detail and, want you to work out measurements and stuff like that. It's just really being aware of it, I suppose. All right. And Greg will tell you too, because he's obviously one of the most recent ones. But yeah, definitely I would just make sure you know your raft slab. And so just that little bit I showed earlier tonight, just have a little bit of a flick over it so you can sort of get a grasp of how to understand those steps of the 1 in 3 if your beams aren't going to be straight. And also it talks about the continuity of beams at the beginning of our raft slab, saying about how when it talks about the maximum distance between them that's specified in the span table, that can actually be increased by up to 25%. So that's another thing.
Yeah, right.
You might find one of the beams is running straight and the other one's on an angle. And yeah, off the top of my head, I think it's 25%. Anyway, if you read those parts, I'm sure that you'll basically understand it. So I don't know if anyone else has told you this too, but we probably did cover it last week, but nearly everyone I speak to says how they find the planned part so much longer. And so my advice would be to, if you get through that multiple choice, basically go straight onto your plans. And I know we want to do the best we can. I don't want to sound like I'm being a dodge, but just remember at the end of the day, you've only got to get 70% in your multiple choice. Obviously, get 100% great. It looks awesome when you go back. But if you're just dwelling on 1 or 2 questions, if it was me personally, I'd go, fuck it, I'm going to guess them because I know I've got 85% already, and you don't want to be, dwelling on 2 questions which are worth, 5 or 6%, whatever it's going to be, purely just to get that up when you're already going to be above your 70 and then miss out on completing your plans. So, yeah, definitely go with a bit of a strategy. And, yeah, obviously if you finish the multiple choice in half an hour and you've got a couple that you want to go over, but yeah, my advice would be try and have more than an hour for your plans. And that's sort of what most guys are finding when they're going through recently. All right, and last thing, you've actually got that roof plan as well, don't you?
Yeah, yep. I'm going to play with it Thursday and take Thursday off. So
yeah, okay. All right, cool. All right, guys. What we might do is go through those little bits of the waterproofing. So I'll just bring it up here on my screen and see if I've got the right one. All right, so this one on my screen, yeah, would have been one of the ones that you had. So, oh, sorry, of course it is. I've got the I've got the exercise there, not the Australian standard. That was handy of me. So let me try and find this one here in your Australian standard. No, that's not one of them. I'm just going to shrink it so I don't have to scroll so much, and then I'll make it bigger when we see it. So, yep, I'm pretty sure that's one of them. So let's make that rather large. So that would have been one of them saying that 1800 basically from the corner, 40 millimeters either side. And then that measurement from basically our from the shower connection at the wall to where our waterproofing is 1500. And I'm pretty sure they're the measurements that were missing off there. And then when we came down to here, yeah, the measurements missing were 1800 again, basically the height, 40 millimeters either side. And we've got down here, basically 40 millimeter either side of these junctions around basically the bath. And then the waterproof, 1500 millimeters from the shower connection again down there. And I'm pretty sure that's all the measurements they wanted on that one. And then the other one, which you would have had in your book, I'll just shrink it and find it, was this one here. So just makes it a bit bigger again. So pretty much the same measurements, 1800 high, 40 mil either side. And then when we come down here, 1800 high again, 40 millimeters either side. And the difference being on here it says water resistant to basically 150 millimeters. And what's the other measurement I've got there? Say 40 millimeters either side of the bath. And then I'm only 25 millimeters basically at the wall and the finished floor level. So they're the two there that would have been in your basically your study buddy, as we call it, your folder. So then the last thing I want to go into, guys, and depending on your knowledge of doing bars and so on, let me just bring this up. I'm going to close some of these that I've got open to make it a bit easier for me. Is this one here. So I'm just going to shrink this a little bit to talk about it. So we're just going to draw this in. So it says we're going to use studs that are 90 by 35 and floor joists that are 90 by 45 acrylic bath. So we're going to fill in the missing details. So basically what we're doing, guys, if you look in your Australian standards, and actually if you look back to the very beginning when I showed you how we do these parts here, we check in our baths and so on, and we do our showers. If I come back up to here, we'll find a shower shortly. Basically this stuff here. This is basically what we're trying to draw in. So we need to obviously show that stud is checked in and for that to sit on. Now it depends on how much you want to go to town on this, because I will just cover with you in your Australian standard 1684, it talks about how much we can notch out of studs. And going from memory, these guys are doing their multiple choice will be all over this because they'll be doing it 4 times a week and I haven't done it for about 6. I'm pretty sure the maximum notch is 20 mil, but it states for a bath it can actually be 25. Yep, there you go. Tom's over it. I knew he'd be onto it. So it's 25 mil for your bath. So if you were doing this for real and you had a lot of time, and you had to draw that in, you'd then probably, after you've drawn it all, then come back and reference and say, 25 mil checkout as per Australian standard 1684 clause, whatever. So that's how big our checkout can be. So we need to obviously draw basically that wall down there with our stud and then basically show, I know it's a shower, I'll come back down here. And then basically show how that wall lining is going to basically go into the lip of the bath with our sealant underneath. And obviously you might have tiles. You're probably going to have wall lining, then your tiles, and then your sealant. So show how that would work. Then here we're going to build a hob, and so what I call a hob wall. Basically same thing. It just depends how high you want to make it. You know, quite often it's not much higher than the bath. It's pretty much done the same thing. It's just checked out above your shower, checked out above your bath, and we normally put some tiles and stuff on top of it. But we've still got to have basically look exactly the same as what it does on these drawings, because when the water basically splashes out, it still needs to hit those tiles and be able to come back into the bath or the shower. And then we need to basically draw basically how the shower would work here. And you can see already there's actually basically a couple of mistakes. And this might be something that you get, they haven't been doing this much recently, but when you've got to draw or fix some elevations, you can see there that those studs, not studs, how good am I going, those joists are actually underneath the waist. And so what we need to do is obviously, you know, maybe put one either side of that and not go past our maximum spacing. And because obviously we can't drill through our floor joist for our waist to go through it, because we know that you know, when we look at our penetrations and so on in our studs and how much we can drill out of our timber members, then yeah, and you can just tell by looking at that it's going to be as wide as what the floor joist is anyway. So we're going to fill in that missing detail. It says how would you fill in the bath, the space. We're going to use a little hob wall. How would you support the bath? So I'm going to actually talk about this before you guys draw it in. Now, me personally, when I do a bath, I actually put like a mud mix underneath it. When I say a mud mix, it's actually you know, like a mortar mix. So basically just your sand, cement, mix it up. Basically I build my bath hob first, have the bath sitting there, mix it up in a wheelbarrow, and then just basically shove it underneath. And what it does, it gives our bath more support and also stops it from moving. So a couple of things depending on, you know, how you do it. Some of you guys might laugh at this and others might go, yeah, I've seen that done, or no, I do that. One thing when I was in Queensland, there was a couple of guys I knew, and they actually were big fans of using expander foam underneath basically their baths. And so if anyone's actually done a bath, it is a bit dicky when you're trying to push all that mud all the way back. And so what I knew of some guys, they would actually build their hob. They would put the bath and everything in it. And what they would do is put the sheeting on and pretty much fill the bath sort of 3/4 of water with the plug in it, and then spray it full of that expander foam, because that obviously fills in all the gaps, and then that supports the bath. And I was always sort of a bit wary going, geez, I don't know if I want to do that, because I don't think expander foam is real structural, and the last thing I want is that bath sort of, you know, tearing in half, because to fix that would be a lot of money. So I've only ever done it with the mud mix, and it's funny because then after these guys told me they were doing that, I thought, oh no, that's not for me. The next bath I got, there was a big sticker on it, and it actually said, warning, please support bath as per manufacturer's specifications and do not use expander foam. So there must have been one or two that had actually failed because of expander foam. So just be aware, if you were drawing this, you're probably squiggling underneath showing that you had some sort of mud mix underneath it. So that it all depends too on how high above the ground your bath sits, or the finished floor level, because obviously if you've got, you know, 150 mil, that's a pretty big bloody lot of mud you got to mix. So I've just normally made some sort of platform, basically sat that underneath, left myself, you know, probably I think between 50 and 100 mil, so I get my hand under, and then pack that under there. So everyone's got their own way, but you want to be sort of familiar with something like that in case you got it in a drawing. And then it says show all wall lining, so we're basically going to do that anyway. So go ahead and basically draw that in. And if you've got any questions, definitely let me know, and that'll probably take us through to our 9 o'clock. And yeah, you can basically, when you draw it, say, hey Adam, take a picture on your phone or something, is this right? But you know, I can probably maybe find a diagram or something anyway. So have a crack at that, and I'll basically yeah, sit here while you're doing that. If anyone's got any questions, then definitely let me know. That email came through, Tom, with Greg's details on it. Make sure I didn't send it to the wrong Tom. Yep, cool. Cool, no worries, Subit. Just with that, actually, Jeff, no, I don't. I'm just trying to think, because I've only got my hand-drawn one, and because it's on an A3 page, and actually I don't have an A3 printer. I've only got an A4. So pretty much what I said, if you've drawn it, basically with these studs down this side on the bath, basically showing something like that, then that's all I've got drawn on my side, on that one there where the bath meets the wall. Then I've obviously just changed these studs, so I call them studs again, how good am I going, these joists, to basically show that they can't go underneath basically the waist. Then I've drawn just a squiggly line to represent my mud that I've got underneath there. I've just drawn a little wall in there that only sort of just goes past the top of the bath. You can make that as big or as small as you like. And that is just checked out pretty much like that where the bath is. And then on the bottom of it, I've got it checked out so it looks like that. It shows the wall lining going into the shower basin, into the shower tray. And I've obviously moved this floor joist as well either side. And then basically on this wall here, I've just checked out the wall again and basically shown it the same as what was on that little hob wall, which is like that. With my checkout, got basically my my wall lining and basically my tiles, and then my my silicone underneath it. So it depends on how. I know it's hard when we're drawing, you've probably got a pen there, but if you wanted to, you could even show the water resistant membrane basically underneath the tiles and so on. It just depends on how clear your drawing is, I suppose. And I'm pretty sure that's all I've got on mine. So if yours looks like that, mate, what these drawings are, and you put it where it was. Yeah, you got all that? Yeah, cool. Yeah, no worries, Valavan. Valavan's asked me, can I take a photo of it? Yeah, no worries at all. I'll do that and I'll send it over. So actually I am going in tomorrow to do a bit of training in a place that has a basically an A3 scanner. So I'll scan it then. That way it'll be a lot clearer, and I'll send it over. So with mine too, I've sort of just done a bit of a rough sketch, so it's probably not going to be the quality as what we do with our CAD stuff. So by all means, yeah, it's really just for my training aid. So I sort of go, okay, make sure I talk about that, but you'll get the gist of what I'm talking about. So yeah, you'll see it and you'll have something pretty similar probably. So yeah, I'll take a scan of that and send it over. So yeah, is anyone still going on that exercise, or is you all done with it? And you're off mute too if anyone needs to chat. All right, so it looks like everyone's all good. So that might be all we need to do tonight, guys. Not very often we get out of here before 9 o'clock. I won't know what to do with myself. I'll definitely hang around if you've got any questions about anything or you've missed a couple of sessions. But as you've noticed, basically the last couple of sessions, I don't know, because I'm not in the office and I live in Torquay, I'm not too sure. Yeah, mate, no worries at all, Tom. I'm not too sure what's been happening with the webinar link. So I get home on Wednesdays, and it's unfortunate, not Wednesdays, Tuesdays, the day I go to Melbourne recently. So I'm not sort of getting home until just after 5. But yeah, just send me a text and say, hey, Adam, I actually didn't get a basically an invite. And normally what happens is when I come and log onto the system, like today, like the actual webinar wasn't even set up. So last week it was set up, but the invite didn't get sent out. So if the webinar is not set up, I can actually see that it's not set up because I can't start it. But by all means, send me a text. And yeah, and I'll know anyway because I obviously can't log on and start if it hasn't been set up. So then I basically just set up the webinar, and I've just been using an old email list from about 3 weeks ago that Maxine sent me. So hopefully there's no one who was coming along for the first time tonight, or they wouldn't have got it. But yeah, just as you have been, just send me a text saying, hey Adam, haven't got a basically a log on yet. When I do get home, I'll basically send it over to you so we can get going. So yeah, so don't stress if it's sort of 20 to 6 and you haven't got anything, because I might be just a bit stuck in that good old Melbourne traffic. All right, cool. So what I'll do, guys, I'm just going to stop the recording there, so it takes a bit shorter for me to upload it.